Hello everybody, it's Mel. Thank you for joining me today for the final wrap-up of 2025, and also shade. So yes, it is February 2026 and probably a little bit late to be filming a final wrap-up of 2025, but things are just the way they are. This is the first time that I've really had a chance to do this video, and yeah, that's what I've decided to do today. So I'm going to talk through the 7 books that I read at the end of 2025. This will be for, I think, halfway through October, November and December, and yeah, that is what we're going to do today. So I'm going to start with a book that I actually read some of earlier in 2025 and then some of later in 2025, which I was reading for a video that is on my channel, which is Gavin Made Me Read It. That is one of my booktubers made me read it, where I pick a booktuber and I pick a few different books that they have inspired me in some fashion to read. Yeah, I was doing one for Gavin from Gavin Reads It All, and one of the books was Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinnerman. So I feel like pretty much everyone knows about Dungeon Crawler Carl these days, but at the time that I started reading it, I think I'd only heard 2 or 3 people speaking about Dungeon Crawler Carl. Now it's gone completely all over the place, and people on and off booktube in all walks of life that I know are talking about this series. So this is the first book in a series. I don't actually know what the series is called, but they are lit RPG, so literary role-playing game books. It's really fun. I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it. I'm definitely planning on continuing with the series, although I haven't picked them up as of yet, but I definitely am planning to. I think it is fun, well written. I don't think to be taken super seriously, but well written and a lot of fun nonetheless. So it is a series in which, well, the first book anyway, is about a person called Carl who lives somewhere in North America, and one night his cat, who isn't really his cat, the cat is his ex-girlfriend's cat, but he's been left with care of this cat, and the cat is, I think, a Persian, absolutely gorgeous Persian cat who is a award-winning, show-winning cat. And anyway, the cat wants to go outside, so Carl opens the door, lets the cat out. Either that or the cat escapes. No, I think the cat escapes actually. And so Carl goes out to try and get the cat. It's really cold, you know, middle of winter in North America. There's snow on the ground, but he goes out in like just his dressing gown and boxer shorts to try and get the cat back in. And then once he's outside, the entirety of the buildings all over the planet Earth are basically collapsed, and dungeons are opened up all around the planet with openings in various different places, and there's this voice over a loudspeaker that says that Earth has been taken over and destroyed, and there are now these dungeons. Everyone who is still alive, most people are dead, or most people in the Northern Hemisphere anyway, because it's nighttime, are dead. And most people in the Northern Hemisphere, that's not true. Most people in North America are, because it's nighttime, and most people in that time zone, and in the time zones that are, anyway, a lot of people have died, is what I'm trying to say. And they basically have, like, I don't know, an amount of time, I think it's like 10 minutes or something, to get into the dungeons. Entering the dungeons means that they enter this game, which is like a computer game. And so it runs very similar to a computer game. You've got stats that you can see. These characters can see their stats, and they're trying to fight monsters and beat bosses and to gain more treasure and better stats, experience points to get better stats, all of that sort of thing. And there's a certain amount of time before the next level is opened up. This level collapses and they have to keep going through. And it's about Carl, who's now Dungeon Crawler Carl, and his cat, Princess Donut, them trying to navigate this dungeon and navigate the rules of this game. And like I said, it's really funny, it's very silly, very tongue-in-cheek, but really well written nonetheless, and just a really great time. I recommend if you like role-playing games or computer games. I gave it in the Peach rating, which is the rating system that I'm currently using, which was created by Erin Smith. I will link her channel down below, along with Gavin's and anyone else that I talk about, so you can go subscribe because they're all wonderful. I used her rating system, which is the Peach rating system, so that stands for plot, enjoyment, artistry, which is like how well it's written, and that sort of thing, characters, and then heart, which is kind of like vibes, like what you feel about it, how much heart you felt was put into it, all of that sort of thing. So ended up giving it 4 in the Peach system, which is basically the same as 4 stars. So yeah, 4 stars. Really enjoyed it, had a lot of fun with it, like I keep saying. The second book that I want to talk to you about is Wool. This is the first book in the Silo trilogy by Hugh Howey. This is an older dystopian novel, or series of dystopian novels that were written by Hugh Howey. They were made into a TV show on Apple TV, which I watched a while ago and really enjoyed, and so I wanted to go back and read the series. I've only read the first book, but like I said, I did enjoy it. I thought it was really, really well done. It's a dystopian future. It is essentially the Earth has been so badly polluted, the air has been so badly polluted that humanity can no longer, or creatures can no longer survive in the air. And so humans have created, well, there's this one silo where there are many humans on Earth living. So there's only, I think there's like 700 or 800 of them or something like that, maybe 1,000. I'm not 100% sure, I can't remember, but there's not a lot of humans left either way. And they live in this silo, which is underground, and there are lots of rules about the silo and about how you live and who can and can't reproduce and all sorts of things like that. And they have this system whereby if you are convicted of particular terrible crime, then it doesn't specify exactly what they are, but if you are convicted of particular crimes, then you are sent out to clean, and that means that you are sent out to clean basically the camera, which gives the one and only view of where they currently are in Earth. And there's a bit of a question about whether or not the Earth is still as badly polluted as it used to be, and the air is still as badly polluted as it used to be, and whether they are being kept underground for some kind of sinister reason, or whether they are, what's really going on. We also are kind of following this woman who used to work in, mechanical, who is involved in a murder mystery and then is elected as the sheriff of the silo, and we're following her, and then we're following a bunch of different people in the silo. And yeah, I thought it was really, really well written. I thought it was really well done. I think it's really clever. I'm intrigued to see where it's going. There are some reveals that happen throughout the series, or throughout the book, that suggest that things might be not quite what they seem, and that there's a bigger conspiracy going on, and there is a bigger story behind what's been happening and why. And yeah, I thought it was really, really well done. I really, really enjoyed it. Like I said, I'm definitely keen to continue with this series. I just haven't yet, but definitely planning on it. It worked out that I gave it, using the Peach system, it was 3.7 stars. So I did really enjoy it, but there were still issues that I had with it. I wouldn't say it was the best book. It didn't come in as one of my favorites, but it was definitely a lot of fun and interesting. So moving on to the next book, which is One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. So this is the first book in a romantasy duology. It is set in a fantasy world in which there are these cards, and they're almost like tarot cards in terms of what they look like and how they function, but they are magical, and they give the possessor of the card a particular types of power, but the powers aren't necessarily entirely how they're advertised or how they're seen. They're maybe a bit more slippery, or maybe have a different meaning. And we follow this young girl, or yes, I say young girl, young woman, who has, I can't remember exactly, it was a while ago that I read this, but I can't remember exactly the scenario, but she's been living with her aunt and uncle and cousins, because her father, I think her mother died and her father remarried, and the stepmother doesn't like her and sees her as a rival to her own children. Unbeknownst to other people, she has picked up the nightmare card, which was owned by her uncle, and the nightmare from the card has actually entered into her. So she's living with the nightmare inside of her psyche. And anyway, it's about this conspiracy to change the way that this society is run, and using these cards. That's about as much as I feel like I can say, apart from the nightmare situation, without spoiling, and even the nightmare thing might be spoiling a little bit, sorry. I enjoyed this one. I gave it, ended up being 4 stars. So again, it wasn't a favourite, but I definitely enjoyed it. I thought it was well written and I had a lot of fun with it, even though I now don't feel like I recall it super well. I do remember enjoying it at the time and having fun with the writing, thinking it was quite well written, thinking it was interesting, and I'm definitely keen to read the second book. I was buddy reading this series, or this duology, with my friend Ellie from Earl Grey Books, but I haven't actually heard from Ellie in a while, since before Christmas, about whether she wanted to read this. Well, she definitely wanted to read the second book, but I haven't heard from her when, because she hadn't finished the first book when I spoke to her about it last. So I really need to get on to her and find out what she wants to do with that, so I can read the second book. But anyway, I definitely recommend, if you enjoy romantasy or fantasy in general. The next book that I wanted to talk to you about is A Heart in a Body in the World by Deb Coletti. So this is a young adult contemporary fiction, which I read for another one of those booktubers made me read it. So this was for Paige, from Pages with Pages video. I will link the playlist for this these videos down below. And again, please subscribe to the people I'm talking about. But yeah, I read this one as part of that video for Paige, and I actually really, really enjoyed this one. I enjoyed it more than I was expecting to, because not that I dislike young adult contemporaries by any means, but I wasn't expecting to get as much out of it as I did. But I did really, really enjoy this one. I thought that it was incredibly well written and really meaningful and really heart-wrenching, to be honest with you. So I gave it a 4.4 in the Peach System and star rating, 4.4 stars. And yeah, I thought it was really, really, really well written. I really enjoyed the message that was in this book. It wasn't hit you over the head with the message kind of book. It wasn't didactic in any way, but it was just really well done. It is one of those books where we are following someone in 2 different timelines, and you get to see the build up to where they are in the present timeline and why they are in that situation and how they've gotten to that point. But it's slowly revealing kind of the crescendo of what actually happened and the thing that occurred that was really full on and really heart-wrenching and really, really impactful. And you find that out at the very end when the main character is doing a speech. So we follow this high school student. She's about to graduate, Annabelle. In the beginning of the book, she is doing a shift at like a McDonald's type of takeaway restaurant. She finishes her shift and she's just stressed and fed up with life and everything, and she decides to start running. And she used to be a runner, but she's kind of not run for a while, and so she's a bit out of shape, but she decides to run, and she ends up running basically across town. Her mother has gotten very upset and very worried about her because she's late home from this shift. The mother calls her and finds out where she is, goes to get her, and in the space of time between talking to her mum and her mum actually coming to where she is, which is a hotel, she's decided that she wants to run across the United States. She has this big argument with her mum, but she ends up winning out and she decides to run across the United States. And then her grandfather decides to support her by like literally being her like support crew, and he travels between the different places where she's going to run from and to each day in a camper van, and then she can sleep in the camper van. And it's about her running, but then we switch backwards to a time, I think about a year prior. We'd learn about what's got her to this position where she's so stressed and so anxious about everything and is willing to leave school and not even go to her graduation in order to run, and why she's in that position. And yeah, like I said, it was just incredibly well written, really heart-wrenching, really, really talked about some important things, and yeah, I highly recommend. I really, really enjoyed this one, even though it's very hard to read in a lot of places. It's still well written, well paced. I like the way that the reveal is done, and yeah, just thought it was fantastic, so I highly recommend. Next up is A Study in Drowning by Ava Reid. This one I gave a 3.8. So I did enjoy this one. It wasn't the best book I've ever read by any means, but I did enjoy this one, but it didn't quite live up to what I was expecting. I'd heard a lot of hype about this one since it was published preceding when I'd read it, and yeah, I'd heard a lot of great things about it, and it just didn't quite live up to the hype. So this is kind of a dark academia fantasy, and we follow a young woman, I can't remember her name, is obsessed with this author and this book that he wrote. It's very kind of, I don't know, I guess it's kind of a bit Tolkien coded, the book, but it's like this fairy story of the world in which they live. And she's obsessed with this book. She knows it back to front. She's an architecture student at this university. She's not doing literature, and that's what she wants to do, because in the world where she lives, in this university, women are not allowed to study literature. They are not considered smart enough or good enough to study literature, and so they have to study architecture. I don't know why that's how it works, but that's how it works. And so she's studying architecture even though she'd rather be studying literature. She sees this advertisement at the university from the estate of this author that she's obsessed with, because the author has died, saying that they want someone, an architecture student, or an architect, to redesign the house that this author owned. It's in a part of the world which is quite dangerous because it's known to be a place that floods a lot. Anyway, she decides that she's not doing that well at university, she's not enjoying university life, and she decides she's going to try out for this role, for this job. And she ends up getting it, and she goes to live the home of this author. And there she meets the author's son and also this other university student who is doing literature. And they are researching the author, and they have this theory that the author didn't actually write the book. It is about them initially not really getting along and not like being against each other, because she's obsessed with this author and this story, and he's trying to basically pull it apart. But then they end up working together, and romance ensues, and etc. And yeah, like I said, I thought it was fun. I thought it was reasonably well written. I liked the characters well enough. Like, I liked the whole thing well enough, but I didn't love it. I thought that it was, going into it, I thought it was a standalone. And I found out that it wasn't a standalone, and that there was a second book either out or coming out when I started reading it. But now that I've read it, I don't really understand why there's a second book. I don't really feel that there needs to be one. But yeah, I don't think I'll be continuing with it. Like I said, it was fine, but it wasn't anything particularly amazing. It didn't read like anything that I hadn't come across. I mean, I haven't come across this exact story before, but it didn't read like anything that it wasn't particularly original, is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, I still gave it 3.8 stars. I still thought it was pretty good and I enjoyed it, but it just didn't quite live up to the hype and didn't feel like something I need to continue with. So yeah, that's that. The next book that I read was The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year by Ali Carter. This one I read for my book club. So I have a book club which is a quarterly book club. So we read books every quarter, and then there's a live show on my channel at the end of the quarter to discuss the book. If you would like to join, then the Discord for that, it's actually my general Discord, and I'm also running a read-along of the Poppy War trilogy and a read-along of some classics out of that as well, with some other amazing booktubers. So I will link my Discord down below so you can go and join both my book club and or any of those other things that you're interested in, or just come along for some general chats if you would like to. But anyway, The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year by Ali Carter was a book that we read at the end of the year, for the final quarter of the year. On my Peach scale, I ended up giving it 3.6, but I think I'm going to up it to 4 stars because I actually enjoyed it more, I think, now looking back on it, than A Study in Drowning, which I gave 3.8, so I feel like it deserves a higher rating. So this is, it feels, when I was reading it, it felt like I was reading a romance, which was a little bit confusing because it was supposed to be a crime book, but it is kind of like a mixture between a crime and a romance book, which I thought was done really, really well. I thought it was a genre blend that worked really, really well. So we are following a woman who is an author. She's a crime fiction author. She's doing quite well professionally, but she's not doing super well personally. Her husband left her for her best friend not long before the book opens, and then she has this rival author who is also, I think, a crime author who she just doesn't like. And anyway, she is offered to go, she's given the, mental blank. She's given a very mysterious invitation to go to, I can't remember exactly how the invitation worked, but she's given a very mysterious invitation to go somewhere, and her agent basically is like, you will definitely want to do this, and she's like, well, I don't even know what you're talking about. But she goes, and she goes to get the chartered private plane, and who should be there but this other guy, this other author who she has this rivalry with, and they're flown to the home of her favorite crime author, who is well known to be like the Agatha Christie type character of the crime novel world in this book, and craziness ensues. And like I said, it reads initially like a rom-com, but there's also a mystery element. I know I've done a really bad job of explaining it, and even though I feel like a lot of the details have left my brain, I did really enjoy it. I just remember I had a lot of fun with it. I had a lot of fun chatting about it. I enjoyed the way that it was written, and yeah, I thought it was a really good time. I'm not going to say anything else because I've kind of, well, essentially I've kind of run out of things to say, but it was a good time. And then the final book that I want to talk to you about today is Strong Female Character by Fern Brady. This is a memoir by Fern Brady. This ended up being one of my favourite books of the year. It's in my top 10. I think it came in at number 5 or 6, and I would highly recommend it. So this is a memoir by Fern Brady, obviously about Fern Brady. Fern Brady is a Scottish comedian. I know her from Taskmaster, which is a very amusing British television show, and I thought she was fantastic in Taskmaster. I read this again also for that video that I was talking about where I read books inspired by Paige, and I also thought it was fantastic. I gave it 5 stars in the end because I just thought it was so incredibly well done. Fern is a legitimately fantastic writer. She writes really well, she writes really meaningfully, and I just really enjoyed it. I thought it was incredibly well written and heartbreaking for sure. It is about Fern's experiences basically getting diagnosed in her, I think, early 30s as autistic, and it's about how she grew up with autism, and at a certain point in her early teens she figured out that she was autistic, but she was ignored for various reasons. But lots of people said things like, oh, you can hold my gaze, you have a boyfriend, things like that. And it basically shows how women and girls present as autistic and experience autism very differently to how boys and men do, and therefore, because most of what people know in the medical profession know about autism, and most of the research about autism is done about and on men and boys. A lot of women are not diagnosed or are misdiagnosed as having different things like OCD and ADHD and different things like that, when actually they are autistic. And it is talking about the experiences that Fern had living her life as an autistic person and not knowing that she was autistic, or not being believed that she was autistic, and how that affected her, and how she would have meltdowns and she would have experiences that were basically because she was overstimulated, or she was not sure of how to, what's the word I'm looking for, how to navigate the world in which she lived, because she wasn't given the tools to do that, because no one would believe that she was autistic. She was just basically told that she was selfish, or that she was rude, or that she was crazy, and not that there was a legitimate reason, and that there were things that she could do and accommodations that she could make and that other people could make on her behalf to help her to exist in an allistic, which is a term that I learned from this book, which is basically not autistic, allistic world. So she was made to feel guilty because of the way she was behaving, which she couldn't help because she was behaving in a way that people were seeing as being selfish or what have you. And she was made to feel crazy and like there was something wrong with her, rather than that her brain was wired in a way that made living in a neurotypical world difficult. She was made to feel guilty about that, and she was ignored. And yeah, it just sounds like she had a really rough childhood and a really rough early, like, teenagehood and early 20s time, trying to navigate the world and being ignored, but also being expected to navigate the world and to mask, because she didn't have a choice, because people expected her to live the way she was supposed to live, in a neurotypical way, because they weren't admitting that she was autistic. It just sounds really, honestly, horrific to live that way, and really difficult. But I thought this book was really, really well written. It expressed all of that really, really well, but it was also comedic and funny and interesting, and I would highly recommend. If any of that sounds interesting to you, if you know more about autism and the autistic experience from one particular person, then I would highly recommend. And yeah, I just thought it was really, 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 really well done, and I'm really glad that I read it. And I gave it 5 stars, which was, I didn't even do the peach scale for that one. I just straight up gave it 5 stars. But yeah, that is the final book that I wanted to talk to you about today, the final book that I finished in 2025. So that's everything from me today. If you have any thoughts or any comments you'd like to make, please do so down below. If you'd like to leave me a comment but you don't know what, then leave me a cat emoji, because I have a cat sitting on my lap. I don't know how well you can see her, but I'm pretty sure you could see her moving around earlier. So she's definitely still on my lap there, so give me a cat emoji. But yeah, that's everything that I want to talk to you about today. So thank you so much for joining me. If you enjoyed this video, I would really, really love it if you would subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. And yeah, like I said, thank you so much for joining me today. I really, really hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.